Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Conspiratus. Your two favorite podcasters, Nate and Sunny, are finally back. And we are here to address the elephant in the room, namely that our last episode was over a year ago. And so we thought we'd come on and do a quick podcast to kind of explain where we've been and what we've been doing and what we're going to be doing in the future.
Right. I think the last one was February 2018 or something like
Yeah,
that.
way back.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it was a good episode. Like, it's weird. So, I like that was with Arthur Brightman and Vlad Zamfir on governance. And like on my podcast, I hosted on a site called Buzzsprout, which like puts it on iTunes and everywhere, Spotify, everywhere. And every month I still notice we get like 100 new views a month, which is like very interesting that people are still watching that episode.
It was content that was ahead of its time, talking about governance in the good old days.
Yeah, totally. So maybe I think it's fair to. I think we owe an explanation to our listeners and viewers or why we haven't like released an episode in over a year, and so I think I think it's actually a multifaceted reason. There's many things that went into it. I think the first one, the biggest one was we had this we started playing with this like interesting format, right?
Yeah, no. So I think that we set our sights high when we were starting this podcast. We were like, okay, we'll come up with this kind of really interesting debate conversation type technique. Sonny and I, if you've ever met us in person or if you've seen our initial podcast, we like to argue with each other or debate each other. And we thought, okay, we'll bring on guests with different viewpoints, and we'll have them essentially have a discussion. And like kind of as we've talked about, it turns out that that's actually like sometimes a little more challenging than one might expect.
Right. Like, so essentially what happened was our first episode was with Arthur Brightman from Tezos and Vlad Zamfir from Ethereum Foundation talking about governance. And anyone who knows those two know that they have, very different views on governance. And, even Nate and I have pretty different views on governance. But, so when we reached out to them to like be on this episode, or we explained to them the format, both of them were like just such great sports about it. Like they're like, oh yeah, this sounds awesome. Super excited to do this. And we did the episode. It went great. And then, Nate and I are like, wow, this was awesome. This was easy. Like everyone
Life's
in the blockchain.
easy from here.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone in the blockchain space is going to want to have a good natured, like well intentioned, productive debate, right? Like where we share opinions and like come to, good discussion without devolving. Yeah, it turns out, the blockchain space had a bit more politics than we expected.
Yeah, so we reached out to a couple other people. We had other podcasts in the works, and we've talked about them in the past. For example, things on stablecoins. And it turns out, for example, stablecoins, I think is a great example. Sometimes the political will to have the conversation there, or the political desire, let's say, to have the conversation just doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think it's fair to actually maybe walk through like the story, what happened there. So we actually originally reached out to we wanted to do an episode on stablecoins, and I think we even released a resource list on stablecoins. I'm not sure or not, but I think we did. If not, we'll release one soon if we didn't already. But essentially, we reached out to MakerDAO and Preston Byrne. And so anyone who follows Preston Byrne's blog, you'll know he's like quite a stablecoin skeptic. And so we asked we asked Preston like if he'd be down to be on the podcast, and he's like, yeah, totally. And then we asked Maker, like, would they be on? And they're like, not with Preston. And so we're like, okay. So then, I was in Berlin at the time, and, some of the Basecoin people were at the Full Node office in Berlin. And so I asked Nader, like, if he'd be down to be on with Preston. And Nader's like, not so much, which, maybe, if you've read some of Preston's blogs on Basecoin, that seems maybe a little bit reasonable. Maybe. I don't know. I personally would have done it. If given the chance to defend yourself, you should take it. But so then we asked Basecoin, like, hey, would you be down to be on with Maker? And then we can focus on discussing the two different types of stable coins, different strategies that they take. But then at Basecoin, they're like, yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, we'd be down to do that. And then we reached back to Maker and we're like, hey, would you guys be down to be on with Basecoin? And so they were, first of all, they took like over a month to get back to me, and just a lot of, but that wasn't the issue. The main issue was that after they finally got back to me, they're like, we don't want to elevate our competitors up to our level. And I was just like, oh man, come on. And so, Yeah. So
Yeah, it seems like we talk a lot about conflict of interest, but it's somewhat understandable looking back on it why people maybe aren't so willing to engage in conversations where they might make their products or their coins or the things that they're working on not appear in the best light. And so we were kind of super lucky on our first podcast that we got such good sports, but it turns out they're harder to find than one might expect.
right, right. So maybe, and then that's part of the putting it all on that is not completely fair. Like, yes, I'm sure that if we spent some more time, we could have like found more guests who are willing to do the debate. But that's where the next problem comes in. If we had spent more time.
Yeah. So personally, we both got busy. So personally, I went back to school. So I'm a college student. Sonny's a dropout. Classic Sonny. But I went back. I'm finishing up my junior year of college currently, and I've been pretty much focusing on schoolwork, which as you can imagine makes it much harder to kind of run a podcast or at least contribute to one.
Right. How do you like going back to school?
It's a big trade-off. It's lovely on one hand because I get to learn a lot, but it's a lot about like school-related things as compared to when you're in the crypto space. You're also learning a lot, but it's like somehow much more focused and much more crypto-related. Here's what I'll say. I'm sure whatever decision I made in terms of going back, I would have been unhappy either way. But I'm learning a lot, so I can't really complain.
Yeah, I've I've had a lot of arguments with your dad about this, so I'm
Me
sure
too,
he's
man.
happy you went back.
Yeah, at the very least, I have that.
What's like the most interesting thing you've been learning while back in school that's like not crypto related?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so I study computer science and I also study like management. And one thing that I've been taking essentially a management of technology class, and we've been talking a lot about like standards battles. And it's been really interesting coming from the blockchain space where I, in some sense, witnessed a lot of standards battles happening, at least in the early days of standards battles, going to a management class where we look at historic examples of standards battles and say, like, what's important here, how do corporations kind of take value from these standards, and we discuss things like that. And it's given me a perspective where I'm concerned that we're going to settle on the wrong standard and screw ourselves. Management particularly has been quite interesting to me recently of technology. What have you been up to?
Cool. 2 weeks ago, I launched a public blockchain, so that's fun.
Woo!
Yeah. So I mean, basically, at that point when we started, I just moved to Berlin for a couple months, and I started Cosmos. We thought we were gonna launch like last year, and then it just like started. Things turned out to be a lot harder than we thought it would be, and then so I just got really sucked up into Cosmos development and just really grinding through for launch, and just like working on the staking and governance and all just the overall Cosmos SDK and stuff. Just released an Epicenter episode. I was a guest on Epicenter this week, and we just released an episode on that. So if anyone wants to check that out, I definitely suggest taking a listen of that. But then 2 weeks ago we launched, and so which was super exciting. And now, because after that, I suddenly had like a lot of the time pressure that was on me. Like I felt like every hour I wasn't coding was like an hour delayed. The Cosmos Hub launch was delayed, and I was like really weighing on me. And then once we launched, it just suddenly felt way more relaxed, and a lot of stress was taken off. And so I've started to scale back some of the coding I've been doing and focusing more on the research side and more like, evangelism, kind of like more like teaching people how to use the Cosmos SDK and whatnot, writing tutorials, giving workshops and stuff, things I really like doing.
Talking on a podcast, maybe.
Talking a lot of podcasts. Yeah. And then, given all that new free time, I'm like, after the launch, I was like thinking about like, all right, where I had this like to-do list. I literally, it was called, in my to-do list app, I literally had it called #post-launch, like a bunch of things that I need to like work on post-launch. Like, I had like some stuff I wanted to write about like Web of Trust stuff and like some DEX ideas I had. And then one of them was like restart Conspiratus. And so that's why after launch, I reached out to you. I'm like, hey, let's get this like rolling again. So, in a little bit of a different form. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on, and I've been pretty busy with that.
Cool. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is, on top of doing Cosmos, you've also begun contributing to one of our competitors, the Great Epicenter.
Right. Yeah. So, I think what happened was, so we recorded that first episode of Conspiratus, and so Brian, Fabian Crane, who worked at Tendermint at the time, he at Cosmos, and so he actually, took a listen at it, and he kind of noticed that we hadn't done another episode in a few months, and I think they were going to do an episode with Charles Hoskinson, and he knew I was like super into Ethereum Classic and stuff, and so he's like, "Hey, you want to like do a trial episode of like being a host on Epicenter?" And I'm sure as like when we started, like Epicenter was like one of our inspirations. Like our dream was
Totally.
like, oh. Yeah, we want to be like Epicenter. Like their whole format was really cool, and we love their brand and everything. And that's kind of like why a lot of our stuff was like kind of based off of them. That's why like we started we had the idea of like, oh, let's like bring on guests and whatnot. And so when Brian offered me the opportunity, it was kind of like I was like, yeah, I'd love to try it out and let's do that. And then one of the things that was nice, like going back to like the whole time thing, was like. With Conspiratus, we were doing all the video editing and graphics and music and social media and everything ourselves, right? And that was just such a huge time suck.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, for Epicenter, they actually already have like sponsors and whatnot. They've been going for 5 years now. And so they had their process nailed down. And so we actually have some like amazing people at Epicenter who like you don't see on the videos, but like we have like a couple of people who do the video editing and social media and everything for us. And so it's really nice where what happens is as a host, I show up and record an interview, and then 2 days later, it shows up magically with like all edited with like on like every podcasting, like Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud. It shows up everywhere with like those beautiful Epicenter graphics with like the polygon stuff.
It sounds much better than the crazy hack together process we used for ours. So
right, exactly. Yeah. And so just like that given how busy I was, like we were just talking about, Epicenter was a much more manageable time commitment for me than continuing with Conspiratus was.
Yeah, cool. So I guess the question becomes then, as you continue with your Epicenter role, which you've been doing a lovely job, by the way, I might say, I'm a big fan, and kind of, with your goals post-launch, and as I move into my summer break and kind of ramp back up in the crypto research scene, the question kind of becomes, how are we going to move? One of the things we've been talking about is how are we going to move Conspiratus into the future? And what are we going to do with the beautiful art form that we've created and the amazing audience we've built?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we've been kicking around is like, if people remember, the podcast actually came later. Conspiratus actually originally started as a blog, and we did like very few posts. We did like one really big one on Tezos, which kind of right around the time of the Tezos like ICO, and that got a lot of popularity and views, and people really liked that. We did one post that I kind of adapted from an old Reddit comment I did on IOTA, and so. Man, have you heard of IOTA in like the past few months? You know what's going on with them? Like...
Not in years. I should look them up.
Yeah, I wonder I every now and then I still debate with like Come From Beyond on Twitter and stuff. But
is he still around?
Yeah, he's still around. He's still around. Just like classic CFB, just like same.
They reached peak hype cycle when they were fighting with the MIT folks about their hash function.
I still like to claim that, I've been shitting on IOTA since before it was cool.
You're a real trendsetter.
Yeah. So anyways, so we had these couple blog posts that we wrote. And so our idea was, let's like maybe try to continue on with some of those blog posts. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff I want to start writing about crypto, just ideas I've been kicking around in my head. And some of them are not related to Cosmos necessarily. And so I figured Conspiratus might be a great place to just like push them down and just like drop them and get some discussion going there. And so, I've been thinking about, so some stuff that we've been talking about is Nate and I have kind of been like talking about this Magnus Opus on like proof of stake, a defense of proof of stake, basically like taking every argument that people make against proof of stake and just like one by one, step by step, like rebutting each one.
Yeah, this came out of a debate that I did a couple years ago, put on by some Coinbase folks, among others, with Charlie Lee on proof of stake, and I realized it'd be lovely if I had a master document to refer to that would help me in my quest to spread proof of stake across the world.
Yeah, like every time I get into a Twitter debate, it would be great to just like post that link and just be like, come back to me after you read this.
Yeah, check out question 3, please.
Yeah. And we should also probably, if you have the video, we should post that video of the debate. Yeah,
that'd be great as well.
And I know you started, your own personal blog, and I saw you had some crypto stuff on there. It would be great to maybe cross list some of that stuff and like post that as well.
Yeah. So I've written some stuff on, like, for example, one of the blog posts is on how do we version smart contracts / VMs in a model where smart contracts are permanent. Because, as we saw with the recent Ethereum forks, these are hard, open questions, and, it's one of the things that it would be lovely to start talking about more in public. And especially on the Conspiratus forum, I think would be a great way to do that.
Mm-hmm. I have a tweet thread that I did on meme coins recently, and maybe just turn that into a blog post would be cool. Also, at Blockchain at Berkeley, which is an organization I was part of, we started running these white paper circles where we like or deep dives where we like take a topic and start like read a bunch of stuff on that. And it turned out to be very similar to the old resource lists that we used to create. So I think it'll be really fun to just continue creating those resource lists, because I think those were pretty valuable as like a good reading list.
Not only are they informative to people who read them, but as someone who was creating them, I found them very useful to get a feel of the subject and also learn a lot about it. So I'd love to do more of that as well. Yeah. Yeah,
curation is a great way to learn, and then also the written form is good, but I think like the podcast form is also good. I think the main thing is I want to avoid like forcing us and like committing to a regular schedule. Like so at Epicenter we have a commitment to a weekly schedule, and we upload a podcast every single week. In the course of 5 years, we've missed 1 week, and it was super disappointing that week. But like that whole regular schedule is sometimes a little bit stressful, where it's like sometimes they're like, oh shit, like we don't have a guest for this week, we need to release something this week, and so that kind of gets
we could commit to it, but I think I'm sure we would fail immediately, so let's definitely not. But
yeah, so let's try to avoid that. And then, so what I would like to do is still every now and then record some episodes, but I like I said, I don't think that format that we were doing earlier is necessarily the best format. And so a couple months ago, do you know Jill Carlson and Meltem Demirors? Yeah, so they actually they created a podcast called What Grinds My Gears, and so. I feel most of the crypto podcasts, like whether it's Epicenter or Laura Shin or Off the Chain, all of them are usually based on the guest format, right? They invite on a guest or interview and whatnot. And that is cool. Obviously, I like it because that's what I do at Epicenter. But I really like What Grinds My Gears because it's just the two of them, just Jill and Meltem, just like ranting about stuff that they like to rant about.
Yeah, no, totally. I think, and I also think that it's in some ways reminiscent of the reason we started this. Like, we liked arguing with each other, and we thought, it'd be cool to bring other people in. But given, as we kind of talked about, it's sometimes hard to do such a thing. Right. Obviously, if we got the chance to do that, we would, of course, jump on it. But I think you're totally right that, like, Nate and Sunny have arguments. I think, first of all, I think it would be incredibly fun and educational for me, and I think for you. And I also think it'd be a great way to kind of, get back the podcast up and running for.
If you remember, that's actually how we started it, where I think it was at DevCon 3. You and I were arguing about something. I don't know, one of the many things we argued about. And then somehow like a crowd of like 10 people formed around us, just like listening to us argue. And then someone suggested like, yo, you guys should make a podcast out of this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I won that debate, right? If I do recall correctly.
I don't think so. I probabilistically, given that I win 80% of them, I'm pretty sure that was probably.
Yeah, that's fair. That's true.
So I think nice thing about What Grinds My Gears is like Jill and Meltem have like such a deep background in like finance. Like, they I think Jill used to be a commodities trader, and Meltem. I forgot what specifically she did, but they both have very deep knowledge of like the finance industry, and that's what grinds my gears so fun and interesting. Is it's like they are like using their deep knowledge of the finance industry to just like make fun of like all the crazy shit that we're doing in the crypto space. Like we're like these like freshman year finance students who are just like
finance 101.
Yeah.
Failed
and we're like
finance
trying to
101.
recreate the world economy, and they're like, yeah, look guys, this has all been tried already in the real world. And so
so, I don't know. I don't know if we can necessarily promise, deep technical knowledge born from years of experience, but I think we both kind of have a unique viewpoint, both having done research and you being a developer on, real open source legitimate projects that exist in the wild. Congrats again, by the way.
Thank you.
And I think it'd be cool if we could kind of, not to rip off their format, but to have a similar conversation with a different focus, a much more kind of technical focus, where we use our technical knowledge to kind of rant and argue and yell at each other about the technical things.
Yeah, that sounds so much fun. So I guess before we close out, it's been a year. What's like interesting to you right now? Like, in the crypto space, what's going on? What have you been doing for the last year? Like, I know you were, like you said, you did go back to school, but you did, I know you were still working on like some Casper stuff for a while. What were you working on? And like, what outside of your work is interesting to you, like in the crypto space?
Yeah. So I recently haven't been doing a ton of research just because of time constraints with school and stuff. But last semester, and leading up to DevCon 4, I was essentially working on getting the first draft of the CBC Casper paper polished enough to present. That's Ethereum Foundation and research with Vlad Zamfir, and others, Aditya. And it was, I think that Casper research, CBC Casper research specifically, was ramping up at the same time that Ethereum 2.0 research was ramping up. And it was really lovely to kind of, at least with this paper, I kind of felt like we got to like a very nice, not a stopping point, but let's call it a nice milestone, where it was like, if you can check out the CBC Casper paper online, we can link it in the description here. But it's a very nice summary of the research that's happened so far. And I personally have found it like a very educational process to create and produce and even read. So that's what I've been working on in crypto. How about you? Other than Cosmos, have you been interested by anything particularly recently? Like, for example, you're a sneaky little validator company you may have gotten running.
I'd call that still in the realm of Cosmos. But yeah, I started a validator company with one of my friends, Dave Oja. We're currently mostly just validating the Cosmos Hub, as well as we're going to start one on another chain, Cosmos-based chain called Iris, very soon. And really, that's really just to put me in the mindset of a validator and just kind of. But and one of the other things that we're doing a little bit on the side for fun is I started I think in order to learn about proof of stake and the UX around it and everything, I think it's good to have the context of mining and proof of work. So I kind of went ahead and we started like one of my old roommates, she'd moved out, she moved to New York, and she left me her mining rig, and she was using it to mine Ethereum. But Grin just came out at roughly the same time in January, and I just got, I'm like, all right, let me try mining this thing. And so I just wanted to play around with it and started mining some Grin, and I started looking more into Grin, especially after an Epicenter episode I did with them a few weeks ago. And I guess, that's one thing I'm super excited about right now. That kind of goes back to that whole that meme coin thread I did where like Grin just like, I've become a Grin shill now, essentially.
I will say I'm totally ashamed. I'm having a conversation with a proof of work miner right now. I can't believe. I never thought the day would come. Yeah, and this is an example of I think something that would be cool to spin out into a longer form is, what does it mean to be doing protocol research and also running the protocol or also using the protocol? What are the dynamics there? What are the conflicts that arise? And does it give you a better sense of what it means to be, a member of this ecosystem?
Yeah, totally. So what's interesting to you outside of crypto? Like, what's like something interesting in your life going on? I feel like, so funny thing what happened to me like a few weeks ago at my apartment here in SF. I had a party. I live with like 3 other crypto people, by the way. And we had like a little party. with like we just invited a bunch of friends. One of my roommates, Parna, she got her U.S. visa, so we had like a America party on President's Day. And so we invited, we planned it like 12 hours in advance, and so about 25 people showed up. Out of those 25 people, 2 of them were not in crypto, and I was just like, yeah, there needs to be a change. I need to I need to fix something here.
You need to diversify a bit. Well, first of all, congrats to Aparna. That's great to hear. I did not know. I've definitely, I would say, like, in the time that I've been at school, I've definitely been branching out of crypto. This is about to sound so dumb. I've been branching out of crypto into crypto. And by that, what I mean is that I've been branching out of cryptocurrencies into like cryptography and number theory. So I'm currently taking a class on number theory. It's like very basic, minimal stuff, but I don't really have any experience with cryptography at all. And it is both unbelievably lovely, incredibly fun to do proofs on number theoretic things, and also totally bullshit. Just you wouldn't even believe half the things these crazy people have come up with. And I think it's an area of something I definitely want to get interested in the future more often. And I don't know if it technically counts as branching out for me, but I'm going to call it branching out. It's not crypto, it's crypto, you know?
On your blog, you also had some stuff around like quantum stuff, and you mentioned you were like, is that something you're like looking into?
Yeah, I'm looking into as an interested fan, and also I would say as a very undereducated, bystander.
Nice.
Yeah,
cool.
It's now that the blockchain buzz has died down a little bit, I figure I gotta hop ship to the next big buzzword, right?
I don't know. Did you see the prices yesterday?
I haven't. I can't follow them anymore. Doing well?
No. I think everything was up like 20%.
Ooh, a good day.
Bitcoin's above 6K again.
No way.
Yeah, dude. Bitcoin Cash went up 60% yesterday. I got my Bitcoin Cash mug right here.
Oh, God. No paid endorsements. That's one of the features of Conspiratus. No paid endorsements.
Okay.
At least.
I see. Cool. Yeah. I guess I've been kind of looking into, I picked this cool Coursera course on economics of money and banking. And, it's really cool. Like a lot of like I always knew there was something fishy about fiat, but like it was really cool to like understand, like see the asset liabilities chart and see exactly where the magic is happening. Do you have
more sympathy? Do you have more sympathy for our current system than you did before?
Way more. Like I think that like learning a lot of the historical background as well as like some of the reasons why the fiat system exists as it is today, and some of the reasons why it maybe got corrupted into like the way it is today, that the reasons we don't like it. And it was very interesting to learn. The professor Alan Young is one of the main authors that we read. I forgot the professor's name, but he takes a very neutral standpoint and very unbiased, and I really like it a lot. So definitely, it's from Columbia University, and so anyone who's interested in the topic, definitely check that out on Coursera.
That's dope. Yeah. It's really funny how much we jump on criticizing, or at least when I say we, I mean the space collectively jump on criticizing fiat sometimes. When I feel like there's to quote you from earlier today, we really are finance 100 dropouts. There's definitely a lot of education personally that we need to do before we can really have legitimate criticisms. I think, but.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Yeah. So thank you guys for listening. And
yeah, we look forward to making more content in the future. I think we're both very excited to kind of get back into it and start, creating. And now that we both are going to kind of have a chance to breathe, one of the things we both love is like talking and educating and discussing, both because it's a fun way to share knowledge, but also because for us, it's very informative. And so we're really, I think, looking forward to it. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you guys for listening. See you next time. We don't know when next time is yet, but there will be a next time, we promise. And
every week for the next 5 years.
No. All right. See you, Nate.
See ya. Peace.